Audio transmission now.
Orders, Commander.
How many times must I tell you? Mind the nerdish cap! We all
Hello again. Episode number 11.
Oh wow,
Hey,
yeah,
we forgot to celebrate that last week was episode number 10. I didn't even
yeah.
think about that.
Double
So,
digits.
double digits now. We've hit a milestone. So we're on dueling double digits right now. So 1 1, 11. All right. So I guess the main update I wanted to give everybody is I'm trying to figure out a way around the video clips and stuff like that because I'm tired of being blocked. For some reason, fair use doesn't apply to a podcast that has 6 subscribers. So,
Right. Yeah.
so go figure.
Yeah,
So
they really care about having those 6 butts in seats
I
rather
guess
than
so. Maybe we're spoiling too much. I don't know, but at any rate, we'll sort that out and jazz it up once I figured out what my alternate path is going to be. So that's the main update. So I wanted to talk about some of the recent trailers, especially Borderlands, because we seem to have. Well, let me hear your thoughts first. What are your thoughts on the Borderlands trailer?
Oh man, where to even start? Like, so there's a few things about the trailer that stand out to me as like yes, I would want to see this in a Borderlands movie, right? So some of the set design and like some of the costume design is like really there, and like it feels like the people that were handling a lot of the like visual aspects of the film, like it seems like they had a good grasp of like the world of Borderlands and like what things should look like. Um, but man, then it just falls apart after that. And it's sure we only have one trailer to work off from, so it's not like it. Who knows? It could end up being like a great film, but
But odds are not very high.
yeah, just from the little bit that we've seen, the whoever was behind the casting, whoever was behind like the dialogue, whoever was behind like just some of the decisions that were made very clearly just do not they don't get it. They don't understand what Borderlands was about. And like they like I'll start off by saying, you know, Kate Blanchett, I feel like I feel like there's a real weird paradigm going on with a lot of the casting choices they made, where it's like, some of the actors and actresses, it feels like they may have a grasp on the character, but they don't have a grasp on like the way to deliver their lines and like the just just kind of it's like one thing works with somebody, but then there's another part that doesn't work with them that might work with
Right,
another
like the physical
person that they
performance
show.
might work, but the vocal.
Right, like it kind of like, so for example with Lilith, I feel like the way that Kate Blanchett was playing the character, that was Lilith. But then the issue is that she doesn't really look like Lilith. Like she's a bit little too old to be playing a character that at least looks the way that Lilith did in the games. Like she just doesn't really look like her for in like in age wise. And then she's missing all of her tattoos as well, which was like a
Oh,
really,
interesting.
yeah, which was like a really big part of Lilith's character, where like her tattoos were like part of like her power set and everything like that too. So it's like that's just a weird part of it to me, for me, with that character specifically. Kevin Hart as Roland, I'm sorry, but like some people love Kevin Hart, but like for me, it's like Kevin Hart plays Kevin Hart in everything. Like he is
Yeah.
the same character, but just with a different outfit on in every
Right.
single movie
Right.
that he's in. And so that casting choice, I feel like, was just off because it's like you cast Kevin Hart, you know he's just gonna play Kevin Hart. He's
Right.
not gonna play
Right.
this like very specific character that's very specifically different from the way that Kevin Hart acts, right? Like Roland in the games doesn't act like Kevin Hart. um,
But
but
Kevin Hart doesn't act ultimately.
well, and so then with Ariana Greenblatt as Tiny Tina, I feel like with her visually she doesn't look too much like Tiny Tina. Like you're able to tell that she's Tiny Tina because she's got the bunny ears and she's got the white hair and everything like that.
Mhm.
But then beyond that, she just doesn't really look like Tiny Tina. And like I feel like the lines that they gave her are things that Tiny Tina would say. Like these are things that you could easily hear Tiny Tina saying in the games. But the issue is that like the delivery that she's giving is much more like, you know, almost like a teenager from Mean Girls, as
Mhm.
opposed to like the manic frenzy, like I'm fucking crazy delivery that Tiny Tina would give.
Okay.
Um, and so like that's kind of my issue with that. And then with I don't know who the actor is that they have playing Krieg, but Krieg is like the big psycho dude.
Right.
Like physically,
Spot on.
and like visually spot on. Like he
Mhm.
looks like the character 100%.
Mhm.
The issue that I may end up having would probably be a similar thing to uh, Ariana Greenblatt's performance, where it's like I don't know, since they didn't give us much in that trailer of Krieg speaking or anything like that.
Mhm.
I don't know if the actor they have is going to end up making deliveries that sound like Krieg, because
Mhm.
Krieg is the same sort of character where it's like, sure he's one of the main characters that you can play, but he's fucking crazy. Like
Right.
he's
He's crazy.
insane.
Yeah.
And like that's the reason that he's got the whole psycho get up because he's the word
Psycho.
psycho, yeah.
Mhm.
And so I just don't know if the delivery is going to be the same with that. Um and then like one other aspect of that trailer that I saw one of like the reviewers give about it was that it feels like man, I forgot who the director is of it, but it feels like he's trying to do his own sort of James Gunn thing. Like it feels like he's trying to do like
His own Guardians of the
A
Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy sort of thing where like
Uh,
you have this like, this ensemble cast of like
right.
outcast
Misfits.
misfits that have to make their way in this crazy
Mm,
world. And it's like
right.
it definitely feels like that sort of format where it's like it's like, Mom, let's go see Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Mom replies, No, we have Guardians of Galaxy at home, and this is Guardians of the Galaxy at home,
Oh no.
as opposed to Guardians of the Galaxy in in the
Theater
theater.
quality version of it.
Right? Like
Okay.
that's kind of what it ends up feeling like, and I hope I really do hope that the film ends up being better than that, but
Mm,
that's really what it feels like, is like it's kind of taking the Borderlands skin and making this like Guardians of the Galaxy, like half family friendly, half like kind of gritty, like
right. Kind of, yeah, pushing the envelope.
yeah.
So it's interesting. A couple things that you brought that up, it really got me thinking, and especially because the whole Kevin Hart thing, it feels like a Kevin Hart streaming movies to me.
Mm,
So it feels like a Netflix deal with Kevin
right.
Hart, and that Kevin Hart's really behind it, and then he convinced some people to do it, and
Mm,
and, and then they had, because Netflix gives them a ton of money, and they spent their budget on things like the monsters and stuff like that show up,
right.
but they didn't spend their money on script, which is a
Right.
Netflix seems to be a Netflix kind of trend,
Mm,
that they'll go for the big set pieces and the action and the big bangs, but they forget to hire somebody to write an actual story to go with
right.
it.
Right. And it's like the some of these casting choices could be really good if just like if it made more sense, right? So like it feels like a film that is appealing to people that don't know about Borderlands already, right?
Right.
Because like there's certain aspects of the trailer that it's like, sure, Borderlands fans are gonna love like these things visually and everything like that, but then all of like the subtext to these things make it so weird to someone who's actually a Borderlands fan. So like Claptrap, for example,
Right.
with how they casted Jack Black as Claptrap.
Right, which I don't understand that either.
Well, so supposedly the whole story behind that is, I guess the voice actor that originally did Claptrap like had a big falling out with like the game studio or something like that. And I don't know like the full details of it, but like apparently it involved like assault and shit like that. Like not that he assaulted somebody, but that he got assaulted by somebody allegedly. Yeah, and so like there's a big falling out with that, and so I have to assume that that's why they didn't choose to cast that voice actor. But then the issue kind of becomes like, okay, so you throw another big name at it like Jack Black, and I love Jack Black. Like
Right.
Jack Black's awesome. He's the man. But at the same time, it's like you're giving him a role where he's completely faceless. His voice is modulated. So like I was telling you before, where it's like I didn't even know that Claptrap was being voice acted by Jack Black until it literally said in the trailer Jack Black as Claptrap. Like I didn't know that that was his voice until it like told me. And so well before that point, when they have that first goofy scene of like, oh well, my functions don't jurisdict that I would be able to tell how deep this hole is, and then they kick him in the hole.
Right.
It just sounded so off. It sounded so strange to me, because it was like, that's not Claptrap. Like,
Right.
like my first reaction was like, that's like, sure, visually it looks perfect, and that's Claptrap visually,
Right.
but the voice is so off, and it was like one of those like uncanny valley things where it was like, what's
going on here?
Like there's some recognizable bit to this, but then everything else about it is off. And it's like, I just don't understand why you would cast someone like Blackjack, like Jack Black too, because it's just like it feels like one of those situations where it is like they're just throwing another big name into this movie just so that they can get more butts and seats. Like, oh, Jack Black's in this movie, I have to go see it.
Right.
And it's just like, man, like I don't know who you're trying to appeal to. Like I don't know if you're trying to appeal to Jack Black fans. I don't know if you're trying to appeal to Borderlands fans. I don't know if you're trying to appeal to Cate Blanchett fans. Like it's just like all over the place.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out, but I mean, again, it seems like there has been. It seems to fall kind of into that trap that historically game to movie conversions have fell into, where they try to get some names on the film, and then again they tend to hire people who don't know the source material. So like you'd brought up when you originally talked about it, that it said brought to you by the people who brought you Uncharted. It's like, well,
Uncharted,
I don't know if
Venom.
And then I think they tried to throw in Spider-Man. Didn't they throw in Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Which is like, well, it's just Sony. That's why they were able to throw in the Spider-Man part of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, out of those three, Spider-Man's the only good one, really. And Venom 1 wasn't too bad. I mean, it was an enjoyable movie for what it was worth and everything.
Mainly because of Tom Hardy's performance.
Performance. I still, for the life of me, can't figure out Sony's game plan with, let's do a Spider-Verse without Spider-Man, especially when they have Miles Morales. I don't understand. It's just like, do a Miles Morales Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got the animated one that, I mean, granted, the first one didn't do great at the theaters, but then afterwards did awesome. And then the second one did great at the theaters.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, it was like the talk of the town for like
right.
the longest time.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like you have your source material right there. And you clearly have people working on that source material that know what they're doing, telling good stories and actually loving the source material.
And being able to weave in fanfare without it feeling like
Right.
it's just complete
Right,
fanfare.
like yeah, because like Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness just seemed like complete fan service, and they
Yeah.
again not a good enough story, so the fan service just kind of stood out as a thumb in the eye type thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like I said, so it feels like they're caught in that trap of we're gonna try to get some names in it. So Kevin Hart fans, like you said, Jack Black fans, Kate Blanchett fans, and everything. But then we're gonna forget to tell a story, and we're gonna get people behind it that don't love the source material. They
Yeah.
love the way the source material looks,
Right.
clearly. So
Uh,
they want it to visually be everything, but they don't love the source material itself. And so it's like Halo again. It's like they
right.
love the way the source material looks, so the series looks like the source material, but the
Exactly. Yeah.
story is completely off. And it's like, let's do, like you're talking about, doing Guardians of the Galaxy for home. Let's do Game of Thrones family version ultimately, I guess.
Yeah.
I haven't really watched, so I can't really criticize it too much, just kind of what I've heard. So it kind of brings me to the next one that I'm excited for, but I'm also worried about.
Mm.
Fallout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I like the trailer. It looked interesting. It looked accurate. But again, now seeing what they did with Borderlands, is it going to be a scenario? Because I think I did the same thing with Halo. When I originally saw the Halo trailers for the series, I'm
Mm.
like, oh, that looks really good.
Mm.
But then I heard backlash right away from like episode 1, so I didn't even watch it. I'm like, oh,
Right. Yeah.
it's
That's
like all these trusted sources are like, oh, it's not worth it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna waste those
Yeah,
minutes.
I'm not gonna soil the memories of like
Right, because
the
it's like,
original Halos.
no, right. So I'm concerned, especially because the Fallout one seemed to come out of nowhere. I'd heard about the Borderlands one for years,
Yeah. Mm.
but I don't remember hearing anything about them working on a Fallout series.
Yeah, that one did kind of come out of nowhere for me as well, and you know, it's kind of weird. I almost have more faith in like mainly one because some of the people that are working on Fallout are the same people that worked on The Boys. Like
Mm,
that's one of the main things that's like keeping my hopes up a little bit.
mm-hmm.
But like one of the other things is just like, man, there's no way that that series could be as bad as like
Oh,
Bethesda's track record lately
with
with their
Fallout,
games. Because
yeah.
like just with how they've handled Fallout lately as a game studio,
Mm-hmm.
it's just horrible. Like
Right.
it's god awful. And like one of the unfortunate things about that is like Fallout is like one of Bethesda's flagship titles, and it was actually one of the things like news-wise that I was going to talk about. It's one of their flagship titles and like one of the properties that they could just keep on cranking out new
Right,
games and
because there's
stuff
so many
based
different
off of.
places you could go, and
Exactly.
it's like,
And
yeah.
Todd Howard recently mentioned that, or I don't know if it was Todd Howard or it was maybe another one of the studio heads that mentioned that the next Fallout game is like still years out. Like it's still like people are convinced that we're not going to get the next Fallout until like the 2030s, which
Oh
is
wow.
absolutely ridiculous. And
Oh.
it's the same case, and they're doing this with all of their flagship titles. So like with Fallout, with Elder Scrolls,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly Elder Scrolls 6 isn't going to come out for like another 3, 4, 5 years.
Oh man.
And like the thing that irks me a lot about that one specifically is like they released the announcement trailer for Elder Scrolls 6 all the way back in 2018. That
Oh.
was already what, 6 years ago that they
Right.
announced this game, and
Oh.
it's still in development hell. Like it's still just not going to get released for like another, like by the time it gets released it's going to have been like a decade plus
Mm-hmm.
since the last game. And like looking at the track record of that, it's like Oblivion was released I think in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and then Skyrim was released in 2011. So it's like still a 6-year gap, but that's 6 years, not a decade, right?
Right. Yeah,
Where
that's a
it's
big
like
difference. Yeah, you're almost doubling that time. Right.
right. Yeah, so like the I have more hope for the Fallout series than I do for the games at this point, because it's like there's no
Wow.
way that the series can be as bad as the games. I may eat my words, and I hope that I
Oh,
don't.
hopefully not.
I really hope I don't eat my words, and it's like the series ends up somehow being worse than what Bethesda's been doing. But yeah, I'm excited for it. It's something that I feel like has a lot of potential for a series, but I do really hope that, like, kind of like what you're saying, I hope that, like, they really got their cards right here. Like, I hope that, between the casting and the writing and, like, the directing, because again, it's one of those things where it's just like Borderlands with the trailer, where it's like visually everything looks great,
Looks spot on.
visually everything looks spot on and awesome. But I hope that, like, besides just visuals, we're gonna get some real substance there.
Right, and that kind of reminds me, because the last Fallout game, if I'm understanding correctly, for the most part, the visuals are strong, but they completely forgot to tell any kind of story or give any kind of point to it.
Well,
Right?
so not only was there no story, because there was literally no NPCs in the game. The game launch, like the first launch iteration of the game, had zero NPCs. You're
Oh.
literally walking around a desolate town and picking up holotapes, which are basically just like recordings of people talking to you, and like giving like random stories, basically, that you would
Okay.
find in the wasteland, of like
Mhm.
people talking about, like, oh yeah, like, secret stash number 223 is stored here, like just random like side quests that you would just get from recordings. And somewhat recently, they were developing more stuff and actually implementing NPCs into the game, because that, besides the game being shit, that was one of the number one things that, like, people were complaining about.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like, visually it looked all right, but part of the issue was that, especially with the way that it launched, I don't know who it was that, like, optimized the game, or like play tested the game before it was released, but it was so poorly optimized that it was literally the joke of the industry for like a hot minute, of like people posting videos left and right of just like really strange glitches that you would encounter, like the game world like falling apart on you, like the fidelity would last like 3 feet in front of you, and then like the rest of the world would just look like a blurry unrendered mess. Like, it was so, you can look up just Fallout 76 memes or glitches or what have you, and you could
Right.
find like fucking like hours worth of content, hours worth of compilations of just weird shit that people would find in that game, because it was just so poorly optimized. um and it's stuff like that just like really makes me lose my like uh
Like faith,
my
or
faith in Bethesda.
well, but I mean, don't they have a history of this? Didn't they do the same thing with Skyrim? I remember seeing all kinds of clips
Well,
of Skyrim, like horses clipping through the ground and all that
Well, and
stuff.
so, and that's kind of the thing. That's like one of the other running jokes of the industry, is like a Bethesda game comes out, and like one of the main appeals of the game is like the funny reaction you can have from just finding some weird shit in the game,
Okay.
like that just happens. Because yeah, like that's been a thing, like, ever since, I want to say, that they released like Morrowind, which was man, like early 2000s, very early 2000s.
Mm.
um Ever since that game, like every game that they've released after that, it's like there's some kind of, like, you play a Bethesda game, you're going to encounter some kind of glitch that is just
Mm.
going to be like either completely immersion breaking or completely game breaking. And it's something that you basically just have to laugh off and be like, well, it's Bethesda, so we just accept it
C'est la
because it's
vie.
Bethesda. Yeah. And like, I really hope that they start building a better reputation for themselves, because that's even what it was like for Starfield, their latest release, which was like a brand new IP for them.
Right.
And it's like, man, like, and it's the exact same issues, where it's like, poorly optimized.
Mm.
There's weird design choices that don't make sense, even just from a player's perspective. there's weird graphics here and there that just don't really make sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's, whole, like, one of the main things that they advertise about the game is like, oh, you can go to any planet, and you can go anywhere on that planet, and like there's going to be stuff for you to do. The game releases, and nearly every planet that you can go to
Mm-hmm.
is just a barren landscape with nothing on it
Oh
besides like
no!
one little like outpost that's like usually got bandits in it or something like that.
Right.
And that's the whole point of the planet, is that there's this one outpost with bandits that you got to go and kill, and then you're done with that planet. And it's like come on,
What was the
like,
point of that? Huh?
right, like, and it just makes me sad because it's like they put all of this time and development into developing this new IP, when it's like all of this time and development could have gone into really making the next Fallout game like
Mm,
really good, or really making the next Elder Scrolls game like top of the line, because
right.
you already have these flagship titles. Why did you feel the need to branch off and make a
This is
new
new
IP?
IP with starting from zero.
Right.
Right. And it's such a genre difference that they really couldn't recycle things from the other
And
ones.
unfortunately, they really tried to. Like,
Oh
a lot of
no!
a lot of the design that you see in Starfield is very similar to the design you would see in Fallout. And
Oh.
it's just kind of like, man, like, this, you're calling it a new IP, but really the only thing that's brand new about this is that you're like trying to take things into the space age. And that's
Mm.
like literally
But
the
you're basically a
only.
Fallout character traveling through space.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, series wise, I have high hopes. And it's one of the first series, especially of a game adaptation in a while, that
Mm-hmm.
like has gotten my hopes rather high.
You're right.
But yeah, I've pretty much lost faith in Bethesda as as a game studio, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, speaking of game adaptations, I saw a little update on the Devil May Cry series.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
forgot that they were working on that.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be on Netflix. I don't remember if I mentioned that it was going to be on Netflix,
Ah.
but Adi Shankar, who's like the main like driving force behind it.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about that he's been working really, really hard on it, and that like he's been working so hard on it that people on his team have been making jokes with him of like, he wakes up looking like Dante, he
Oh
like
no!
goes and eats lunch looking like
Like
Dante,
Dante.
like just all of this different stuff like that. But
He is Dante.
right, yeah. But one thing that I didn't realize was that the animation studio behind it
Mm-hmm.
is Studio Mir. And I don't know if you know who they are, but
No, I'm
like,
not familiar.
yeah, but they're like the studio behind like the Boondocks,
Oh.
Legend of Korra,
Okay.
like
Okay.
some of Star Wars Visions.
Okay.
Um,
Yep. Because I definitely recognize its style in some of those episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just hearing that got me really hyped. Where it's like, wow, like this animation studio's got some like really good
Mm-hmm.
properties that they've worked on. So at least from an animation quality perspective, it's
It's gonna
probably going to be there.
solid,
Like,
and
yeah,
it sounds like the right people are behind it that love the source material,
right.
so it should be
Yeah,
solid.
because I mean, Audie was saying he was saying like, oh, I don't want this to just be another animated show on Netflix. I want this to be one of the best shows on
On
Netflix.
Netflix.
And it's like, oh wow, like, okay, like, wow, we're gonna take DMC to that level. Let's do it. Like,
Yeah,
let's
do it up, right?
yeah. But yeah, so, and that was just in a short little kind of like interview clip thing that was just part of like a hype up like trailer tease thing. So he
Uh,
said get hyped. And I'm hyped now about that. Um, but yeah. So then one other thing, I guess news wise, that I wanted to talk about with you was the Fantastic Four cast announcement.
so
Um,
yeah, like I said, I'm still debating on if I like the casting for Mr. Fantastic.
hmm.
Um, I don't think now I can't even think of his name from Quiet Place.
Oh,
John
John Krasinski.
Krasinski.
Yeah.
I don't think he. I know fans were really wanting to have him, and I really think fans wanted him because they wanted his wife to be Sue Storm. That's
Mm.
what I really think. So I think. See, here I am blanking out names again. What's the name of the guy they cast? What's from Mandalorian?
Oh, Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. So I think he's a phenomenal actor.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen him play a character quite like what Reed Richards needs to be.
Mm.
So, I guess there's, I can't limit the man, so I can't say he can't do it.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see how they make him look like Reed Richards. That's part of my concern, that they end up in a situation where he can pull off Reed Richards' character,
Mm.
but visually it's so far off.
Yeah.
That's my only concern, especially because the way he's been doing himself lately, it's nothing like Reed Richards would ever do his appearance. So hopefully they convince him it's like you can't look like Pedro Pascal,
Right.
right? So it's like he does, because even in Last of Us, it was basically I look like Pedro Pascal, but I'm acting like
Joel.
right?
Yeah.
And that's a choice, and he pulled it off. But I don't think he could pull it off as Reed Richards, looking like Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still questionable about it too. I have a little more faith just because, like, you know, I going into The Last of Us, I did not expect him to be able to pull off that performance like at all. Like, I
Yeah.
figured that it was just going to be kind of like what we were talking about with Kevin Hart, where it's like Pedro Pascal in a Joel costume. Like, I didn't think that that he was actually gonna communicate the character
Right, so it was more
well.
like Joel in a Pedro Pascal costume.
Right, yeah. Like, that's what it kind of ended up being like
Right.
instead. Yeah, and so I do agree though that, like, visually, like, if we were gonna judge a Mr. Fantastic purely visually, I feel like John Krasinski looks more like a Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think
But then it might come down to Pedro Pascal is able to better act a Mr.
right, and I think
Fantastic.
that's the thing is John. I don't think could pull off the performance. But even if you look at the clips or the illustrations that they made of the cast,
Hmm.
they still have Pedro Pascal looking like Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, like, yeah, still with like the mustache, like the
Yeah, the
signature.
scraggly and all that,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like the signature look of Pedro Pascal,
Right.
right? Um, and I don't know if you got the names of all the cast, but the woman that they cast to play Sue Storm,
Vanessa Kirby.
Vanessa Kirby. So she was in. See, your dad is getting old. I blank out on all these
It's
names.
okay.
The spinoff of the Fast series.
Mm.
Dang, with The Rock and all that. But she
Oh,
was
Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw. There you
Uh,
go. She was in that, and I thought she was great. And I thought she was one of the best things about that movie was her character and everything.
mm.
So I've seen her in a few different things, and I've enjoyed her. So I think she could pull off Sue Storm. I actually like that casting. The guy that's playing Johnny Storm, he's from Stranger Things,
Mm.
right? This will be a very different kind of. Well, yeah, it'll still be a very different character than the character he played in Stranger Things. But I mean, Stranger Things, he was kind of the outcast rocker dude. It was really kind of a strange paradox that he played. He pulled it off because he
Mm.
was still part of like kind of the outcast group and everything, but he was probably the coolest one of the outcasts,
Mm.
right? So he was like, just depending on when he was born, he could have been just the king of the school, but he
Yeah.
just happened to be born at the wrong time, I guess you could say. So instead of being king of the school, he was king of the nerds,
Mm.
right? But he pulled it off. I thought he did a phenomenal job. So much so that there's such fan favorite of him and everything. Like, this is a spoiler. He doesn't make it, but for some reason, Netflix was in talks with him to reprise the character in a prequel, which I don't understand how they would pull that off, unless he
Yeah.
just deals with some weird supernatural stuff. And then it all kind of goes away, and he thinks, "Well, that was odd. Off to my next thing."
Well, that was an interesting fever dream.
That was, yeah. Maybe I dreamt all that. Maybe I shouldn't be doing those shrooms. Maybe next time I'll just drink a Coke instead.
That would be kind of funny though, like imagining like a character that like is like on psychedelics, and so like
Mhm.
they're actually experiencing stuff with with the upside down, but
Right.
like they don't understand that it's like a real thing.
That
like
it's
they
happening to
think that
them.
it's just a trip or
It's
something.
just a fever dream. I think that's the only way they could pull it off. You would still kind of have the question of why didn't he recall any of that when he was going through this stuff and
Right.
go, wait a minute. So I think if they do it, it would have to be sort of like a Scooby Gang thing where strange things are happening, but then he figures out that it's like the government behind it or something like that. That it was the government trying to cover up something else, and they do all this strange things in an effort to cover up the real thing, and then somehow he exposes it. But then again, it'd be like, why didn't he bring up any of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's sad to say, but I kind of hope they don't do it because I can't imagine how they could do it and not just make it a, like we talked about before, a cash grab or worse, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So, and then the guy that's playing the Thing, I don't know if I'm familiar with him from anything.
The only thing that I know that he's in, albeit I still haven't watched any of the series, is The Bear.
Oh, that's right, he is.
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember him from The Bear, right? Because he's the brother.
Yeah.
And he actually is a really good actor, so it'll be impressive to see how they do that and everything. And it's kind of cool now. The more I think about it, that they cast somebody that's a really good actor to play something where, like you were talking about the Jack Black thing, where you don't see his face, where he doesn't get to be, do the face acting as himself.
Right.
He has to do the face acting as somebody that's made of rock.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, Taika Waititi proved that you could make a true entertaining character out of rock.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I think that, if nothing else that they took away from Taika, hopefully nothing else from Love and Thunder, but nothing else they take away from that you can pull off a rock character and make him interesting and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and hopefully they get the design of the Thing right this time, because I mean, like at least in like the little poster arts that they released, he looks really good. But let's hope that he looks like that in the movie.
Right. Well, like I said, because the poster art hopefully isn't 100% what they're going to do, but at least on the Thing, maybe that one's going to be correct. And like I said, Sue, you don't have to do much with her. Vanessa Kirby could just pull it off as herself, so that's fine, everything. And then Johnny, I think ultimately he could probably just pull it off as himself. So those ones are relatively easier to do. I think they're good castings and everything. I just, like I said, Reed Richards, and then like you said, the Thing, hopefully they think those through and make it work and everything. But I mean, at least if nothing else, recent Marvel has precedent that they could pull off the effects for that character and make it believable, where you're not just thinking, well, let me look for the flaws in that. You just, you get, submersive experience where you're not thinking about that. And that's, I think, the key thing, because even if you think about even Iron Man 3, Iron Man 3, where you had the extremist guy when he goes into complete flame mode and everything like that. I mean, they come so far along than if you look at the original Fantastic Four movies that Fox had done. So, I think they could pull it off and not hopefully shoot themselves in the foot. And I mean, this is going to be a big one because, everybody talks about it's the first family of Marvel Comics, right? So you've got to get this right, especially being that there's been 2 previous attempts. The first attempt, kind of okay, not the worst, especially during the time. The second attempt by Fox, a total disaster.
Yeah.
A train wreck from beginning to end. It's like anytime you have a director complete a whole film and then you say to him, nope, that's not what we wanted, and we're going to chop it up. And then we're going to do a ton of reshoots, and we're going to bring the cast back, and they look so different that we got to put wigs on them and stuff. It's like, come on, people. Somehow, at some point, you got to think, oh, maybe we should just shelf that, because if we got to do reshoots where you can literally tell that the person is not the same because their appearance has changed so much. Any rate.
But speaking of the whole first family aspect of that, do you think, especially with the way they've been doing the promotional material, do you think that they're going to have the film at least start out in the 60s?
Yeah, I think my theory is that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to start out with, at least some telling of their origin story. Hopefully they don't spend too much time on it, kind of just really jump ahead type thing. And even like maybe learn some lessons from the new Spider-Man series where we're not going to spend much time at all on the origin. People know the origin. Right. Anyone that really cares knows the origin. we can give a taste of it, but we don't need to dwell on it.
Mm.
And I think that's what it's going to be. Is I think they're going to be, fairly established already as the Fantastic Four and fighting whatever, at that time period and everything. And then something's going to go dramatically wrong
Yeah.
about probably 3/4 of the way through the movie. And then we're going to pop into the future. They're basically going to be, come through a warp or something like that and show up, sort of like the post-credit scene of, the first Avenger, Captain America. But I think they'll get a little bit more time in current time and encountering current, heroes and stuff like that. And then that kind of brings them in, and then we head into theoretically, because I think it's supposed to come out before Secret Wars, right?
I believe so.
Unless what they're going to do is we're going to have, because we're supposed to have Kang Dynasty, which I think I just heard got renamed.
Yeah, because they're doing away with Kang supposedly.
So sad. So whatever that is,
whatever that movie,
whatever becomes of that Avengers movie might be the catalyst for, because I can't remember. I think originally they were targeting Fantastic Four before, but now I think, if I remember correctly, and I may not, but I think now it's in between the two movies. So I think there's going to be a tie-in from events from that Avengers movie that's going to cause the event that brings the Fantastic Four to current times, and then they'll be involved with Secret War.
Okay. So you think it might have to do with like Doctor Doom or like the TVA or something?
Well,
like
I think it's going to be a Doom thing more likely than not. But so it's so funny because the original Secret Wars that I remember from a kid, it was actually the Beyonder who caused the whole thing and brought the heroes and the villains all to this battle world and had them go at it and everything. And the Beyonder turned out to be Reed Richards' kid from the future. So he becomes so powerful that he becomes like this all-powerful being. And then he basically makes this contest to determine who's right and who's wrong in the world. Is it the villains or the heroes that are right or wrong? Ultimately, the heroes win, and then he sends them back with basically trophies, and that's the original origin of Venom. So that the black costume was one of the things, the symbiote costume was one of the things the Beyonder gifted Spider-Man, and then it turned out to be alive, and it led to the whole Venom thing. I think at some point they may have changed that. I don't remember them changing it in the comics. Of course, in the movies and the cartoons, they definitely changed it.
Yeah.
But originally it was a result of the original Secret Wars. Now, there was a follow-on Secret Wars that I don't ever think I ever read that. And I think that one was more caused by incursions where these multiverses started to clash with each other, and only one could exist, or potentially none would exist. And that was Doom was more or less the catalyst for that.
Yeah, because he was the one behind Battleworld in that iteration.
Right. So I think my theory is it's going to be some kind of mixture of those concepts, because I don't think they're going to go the Beyonder route. So I think it's going to be somehow Doom does something, and that's why I was thinking it's going to be in between these movies. Doom does something where he thinks he's destroyed the Fantastic Four, but he blasts himself into oblivion as part of the process too. And then it turns out that he's sucked in all these cosmic powers, and he pops up, and then he starts to do things and ends up kicking off Secret Wars. It's something like that, I suspect.
Yeah. I hope that they know what they're doing, because it seemed like they had themselves set up with Kang, and now that that's just done and over with, it's
well, yeah, I think maybe part of the mistake was having Kang's, because it was awesome to have Kang, in the Loki series, especially how he was revealed at the end of Loki season 1. But then to have his first movie appearance be an Ant-Man movie, one of the least successful Marvel movies of recent. I don't think that was a good choice, and it sounds like because you and I, we both have still not seen that movie. And we really loved Ant-Man 1. We were good with Ant-Man 2, but it's there's been so much bad press and publicity around Ant-Man 3. We haven't seen it, and we can watch it for free. And that's bad when you're not even willing to give it a chance when it's free. So free's not enough. It's got to be you pay me to watch it, and then I'll watch it. And it's got to be a certain rate you pay me. can't be the cost of a movie. So to me that wasn't a good sign. And then of course, all the off camera stuff that ended up happening, and I still don't quite understand how that all played out, but it's not my place. It's a sidebar here. Yeah. It's really funny because I was watching, I love these true crime series and stuff like that. And there's this one about this guy who basically was scammed. This woman, essentially, wooed him and won him over, and she had kids and everything, and he was paying for her and paying for her kids. And then they go on this vacation to Mexico, and she supposedly gets kidnapped. And then he figures out, wait a minute, there's something fishy going on. So he comes back home, and his house has been cleared out and everything. But because his wife at that point, she had the legal right to do this stuff. But then she started clearing out his banking account. But then she was claiming she was still in Mexico being held hostage. But then he got to look at, because somebody was using his cards and everything. So he went to a store and got them to show him the camera. And sure enough, it's his wife. So he divorces her, but as part of the divorce hearing, of course, she's asking for all this money, as a settlement for the divorce and everything. And he's like, oh my gosh, and he's on the hook for all this. Well, then it turns out she was already still married. So legally, she couldn't be married to him. But then the judge still had him pay alimony.
Oh my God.
So it just kind of seems like, fast forward, you've got all this evidence that this person was up to no good and was wronging you, but then you still end up on the hook for it and found guilty. And that's what ended up happening to him. The judge never would take into consideration that the woman was still legally married to someone else, which showed that she was clearly got engaged in the marriage under false pretenses. That, to me, there's nothing more black and white, that you're legally married. And it wasn't like she married this first guy and then forgot she was married to him. She actually married the first guy, divorced him, and then married him again, and then married this new guy that got scammed. So it was like, I think since you married him twice, I think you know that you married the guy. So it just seems like it's just a weird thing to think about. These type of things happen in courts, and these are not like people that are poor or the underprivileged people. These are people that are wealthy, right? Jonathan Majors is pretty well off, right. And this guy in this story was pretty well off, and the court system failed both of them like that, where it seemed like all the evidence showed that this should be open and shut case, and yet and still they lost bad. Yeah. So he's still paying alimony on a marriage that was false. That's gotta suck. Ouch.
Yeah. Wow.
So, at any rate, what else do you have?
So there is just one other thing that was announced kind of recently that I'm pretty excited for. The new Elden Ring DLC got a new gameplay trailer released out like a couple days ago.
Okay.
And it looks so good.
Oh, okay. So it looked like they got that one right, huh?
Yes. Like it just looks like a continuation and like almost like a ramp up of just what the original game is. And man, like Elden Ring, like I have like over 700 hours in that game.
Yeah, no, you've got a lot of hours in that game.
Like I played that game so much because it's such a great game, and like I'm really excited for this DLC because it looks like they're just taking what they have with that original piece and just adding on to it, like ramping it up, like scaling it up a lot. And I'm so excited for it. Like the Miyazaki, the studio head of From Software, gave like some tidbits of like the scope of like how big the DLC is and like the story and everything like that. And it just sounds like a bigger Elden Ring. Like a lot of people are just calling it Elden Ring 2 because it sounds like it's just gonna be like the next game essentially.
But it's so weird that they didn't just try to market it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because like even with like the pricing of it, because I believe that it's gonna be a $40 DLC.
Yes. So they could have upped it by like $20 and said Elden Ring 2.
Elden Ring 2, yeah. Yeah, because like even just with the way that they're continuing the story, it's like they're adding so many new elements that like weren't things that you would have previously thought of with
Mhm.
the original game's story. And so like, there's just so many aspects and qualities of it like that really make it look like this isn't so much a DLC. It's like this is a continuation of the game, like the furthest that we're gonna take it, and
Mm.
then like we'll move on to whatever the next
Next thing
project
is,
is,
oh, so
right?
maybe that's what it is. This is we'll make a really good DLC to buy us time to get this next version out. But I don't know if it'll buy them 4 years or whatever.
Right, yeah,
So,
yeah. I don't know. But yeah, that's one that I'm just really excited for, and it looks really good, and it really looks like they're evolving the combat and
mm,
evolving like the enemies and just everything. And so that's coming out. I forgot the exact release date, but I think it was late June this
interesting.
year.
Yeah, it seems like
Um,
they would have been smarter to name it too, and then they would have bought themselves more time. DLC, I think, buys you usually about a year best.
mm.
But I think a game you can kind of get away with, a few, 3, possibly 4 years with a game release.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and it does really make me curious, like what their plans are beyond the DLC, because
Hmm.
it's like Elden Ring follows a format that all of their other Souls-like games have,
Hmm.
and so it's like I don't know if they're in the plans of after Elden Ring we're gonna do another Dark Souls game, or after
Oh,
Elden Ring we're gonna do another Elden Ring game. Like I don't know what direction they're really gonna go with it.
hmm,
Um, because by far Elden Ring is the most popular of
right,
any of their Souls like games.
right.
And so I don't know if they're going to opt for this has been our most successful route, so this is the route we're going to take,
Mm.
or we're going to go back to kind of more of the specific fan base that really enjoyed all of those Dark Souls games before Elden Ring, right?
Oh, interesting.
um yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what direction they're going to take after this, but it's intriguing, and it's exciting, and it's one of the only like game studios left that I'm like actually excited to hear about their roadmap.
Right, right. Interesting. All right. It's funny because you're talking about Elder Rings. I'm thinking Elder Scrolls the whole time.
Oh yeah.
So I guess they did haven't. They don't necessarily need to buy themselves 4 years. It's not the same game studio. My bad. All right. Well, I think unless you have anything else, I think we'll wrap it up here for this week.
Yeah, no, I think anything else I'd probably just save for next week.
Yeah, and
So
I think next week maybe we should talk about Avatar. I know you have some concerns.
yeah.
I think at least give the first episode a try, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, there's a couple shows that I should catch up on too before.
Right, and we can talk. And then, like I said, Blue Eye Samurai. I'm
Oh
telling you,
yeah.
give it a try again. Just check out the first episode. Then you can come back and go, Dad, pound sand. And then I'll be like, okay, cool. You don't have to watch anymore. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again all for joining us. We probably had some audio issues at the beginning, by the way, because I forgot to turn on my mic.
Oh no.
But at any rate, I'll
Maybe
just
they
put
could
an
hear you
apology.
through mine.
Yeah, I'll just apologize on it and everything. I'll apologize in advance here. But any rate, next week I'll remember to turn on my mic right away. But again, thank you for joining us. Mind the Nerdish Gap. Thank you, Dante, for joining me. And
Thank you.
we'll see you guys all next week. Episode 11 done.
Take care, everybody. See you around.
Bye bye.
Audio transmission man.
Orders, Commander.
How many times must I tell you? Mind the Nerdish Cap!